Hail YouTube, Dominions, Dumentites, and Archvillains! Thank you all for supporting me in my effort to save pop culture. And I would ask you please make sure you are still subbed, turn on your notification bell, and if you are not subscribed, please consider doing so. This channel could use your support. Thank you, and enjoy this video. Last night, just before hitting the proverbial hay, I happened to spy an article by the Wall Street Journal revealing that HBO Max had removed the classic film Gone with the Wind from their streaming service amid growing concerns about racial injustice. Never minding, of course, that the removal of Gone with the Wind from audiences is, in and of itself, racial injustice, given that Hattie McDaniel was the first black woman to ever win an Academy Award for Gone with the Wind, an irony that seemed to escape HBO Max somehow. There was a larger point here, an issue that made my blood pressure rise when I saw this story, a problem moving forward that defenders of cinema and protectors of truth must address if we are going to save not merely pop culture, but all culture moving forward. I urge everyone to think very carefully about what I'm about to say and watch this video all the way to the end, because this banning ties into the very heart of what I stand for and what this channel represents. Regardless of whether or not you like Gone with the Wind, HBO Max yanking Gone with the Wind from their service is an outrage, and here's why. When I saw that HBO had done this, here is what I tweeted out. Sure, HBO Max, let's erase any art, literature, speech, or thought that might offend. Let's erase our history, filter out facts, delete inconvenient truths. Censorship is freedom. Welcome to 1984. Gone with the Wind, erased by HBO Max. What classic will be banned next? Hashtag 1984 in 2020. In George Orwell's classic novel 1984, the Ministry of Truth routinely destroyed historical documents that stood in contradiction to the official policies and representations of the totalitarian government of the novel. Essentially, the Ministry of Truth was tasked with erasing things the power elite didn't want to exist and forging phony historical documents to lend authority to the government's lies. This is beyond mere censorship. This is reshaping reality into a structure more to the liking of the power elite. And it is not that much of a stretch to say that what HBO Max did in banishing Gone with the Wind is very much in the proud tradition of the Ministry of Truth, because it represents those in control of what we see, removing something they don't want us to see. While HBO is not a totalitarian government, and we have other options to watch Gone with the Wind elsewhere, particularly if we own the movie on disc, which is wise, there is a much larger principle at stake here. Can you see Gone with the Wind elsewhere? Yes, for now. But if this is the current corporate frame of mind, to suppress speech that may be upsetting or controversial, if this is a trend and we don't complain, our culture will be erased bit by bit, according to the shifting of the political winds and what the corporation in question views to be in the best interests of their bottom line. Which begs the question, is our culture a disposable commodity? And are we going to be silent as chunks of our history are erased? These are dangerous days for those of us who care about our cultural heritage. While it has always been true that dictators and oppressive regimes always move to destroy the literature of the past in order to tighten their grip and rewrite history, now that the bulk of our old movies and TV shows are being migrated into the cloud, it has never been more easy for vandals looking to reshape our civilization to eliminate ideas and opinions they find problematic. Sure, it's convenient not to have all that physical media cluttering up your home, and it's nice to just use a few pushes of a button to navigate a menu and pull up the movie you want to watch. But there is a price to be paid down the line for that convenience. Because the thing about clouds is, they dissolve. And when the part of this particular cloud containing one of your favorite movies evaporates, it takes your favorite movie with it. And if you don't have a physical copy of that movie in your collection, it might be gone forever. On demand isn't just for consumers, it's also for corporations. And thanks to the cloud, there will come a time very soon when they can eradicate any movie, any television show, any idea can be made to disappear on demand. Do you like that idea? That chunks of our history can be gone with the cloud? Imagine a world 10 years in the future when DVDs are all but extinct and the current trends have continued to the point where everything lives in the cloud. Is it hard to imagine movies like Gone with the Wind or Die Hard or Pulp Fiction or Blazing Saddles vanishing at the push of a button? You think, oh, but I have copies of those movies, or, well, there's always online copies floating around to nab. Perhaps, but you're missing the point. You're personalizing the problem. And while that solution may be true for you, these corporations are taking the long view. Sure, copies of these cultural milestones may be floating around in little corners of the internet, in personal collections, but if entire generations of people forget they exist because they're not on the cloud and are largely forgotten by a bunch of young people who are utterly ignorant, they get conditioned by approved movies long before they discover the classic movies, at which point, once they stumble across the classic versions, they're so brainwashed they view them through a corporate-approved filter and will dismiss them as racist, sexist, out of date, black and white, slow, because they don't have explosions every 5 minutes. Essentially, if we allow corporations to pick and choose what parts of our culture they'll allow us to see, the parts of our culture they don't like are headed for extinction by attrition, by default, by virtue of not being widely available in the cloud. And perhaps even worse, what if companies like Disney continue to censor movies, literally cutting out shots and scenes they don't approve of? It's already happened to Splash, to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Princess Bride and Die Hard and a lot of other 20th Century Fox movies are already locked in Disney's vault for reasons unknown, probably because they want to do shoddy remakes of them and so they hope to remove the originals to prevent unfavorable comparisons between the original works of genius and the cheap shoddy knockoffs that they want to ram down our throats. On the cloud, you'll never be certain you're getting the original uncut, uncensored movies ever again. Once in the hands of the Ministry of Truth, every movie must be assumed to be a lie. And where does it stop? This removing of movies that no longer fit the politically correct agenda? They removed Gone with the Wind because of concerns over racial injustice. So it had to go because it depicted a period in our history where slavery was an ugly fact of life, right? HBO Max, like other corporations, are falling all over themselves to appear sensitive to racial and sexual issues, sacrificing art on the altar of political correctness. So where does this banning stop? How long until HBO Max removes Casablanca because it's insulting and no longer appropriate that Sam is playing the piano instead of owning the bar? How long before The Adventures of Robin Hood is banned because of its appalling lack of diversity in depicting life in England of the 1100s, a period when we know that England was just awash with other cultures. And by awash, I mean there wasn't much diversity at all, but never mind. That's an inconvenient truth. And if truth interferes with a political message, that truth has to go. Welcome to 1984 in 2020. My mission statement is to save pop culture. But increasingly these days, pop culture and the larger culture are under assault from cultural vandals who view the past as disposable trash and political aims as transcendent over art, over beauty, over truth. I'm not defending Gone with the Wind or any particular idea. I'm defending all movies and all ideas. Corporations must not be allowed to pick and choose what parts of history we see, to remove bits of our culture on the basis of political expediency. History is only disposable in totalitarian regimes. We must not allow this to stand. Are there things in Gone with the Wind that are offensive to modern sensibilities? There are, to be sure, but it's a historical document depicting a time even further in the past, a dark time for human rights. There are lessons to be learned in Gone with the Wind, discussions to be had, analysis for the purposes of education. The answer is not to ban any idea, but to allow ideas to freely exist concurrently with the right and the obligation to debate those ideas. That is a necessary component of democracy, of freedom of speech, freedom of thought. And I'm sorry, HBO Max, but this is 2020, not 1984. And freedom is not slavery, and truth is not lies. And I'm sad to say that any goodwill that HBO Max gained by releasing the Snyder Cut may now be gone with the wind. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry.
Ha 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 ha.